Today I was moderating a conversation about death, dying, and funerals in an attempt to normalize this conversation that we really all should be having with the people that we love. So it's really uncomfortable for a lot of people to talk about death, dying, and funerals, right?
Mm-hmm. Who wants to confront their own mortality? Who wants to just be out there and say, hey, I'm gonna die one day?
I think that people have a hard time talking about death because they don't want to think about their own mortality. They don't want to think about leaving those that they are close to and those people that they love.
Do we think maybe that in our reluctance to talk about it that we could be making things more difficult?
I know that I wouldn't want to leave my children with any questions to struggle with if I were to suddenly to be gone.
I think that rather than making it such a big deal and a very formal occasion, let's sit down and talk about death, I think the way to do it is just in little bite-sized pieces and just start having smaller conversations, maybe talking about someone that you know or perhaps a funeral that you went to, and just plant the seeds for the bigger conversation. Maybe also talking about what you want is a good way to open up the conversation with other people about what they would like. So you could go home today and say, hey, I was talking to some girls today.
What I found most interesting about today's session was the fact that most of the people within that room had really not thought about or considered end-of-life planning.
So I'm just curious, how early on do people start having conversations with you about planning a funeral? I mean, I've personally never planned one before and not really sure.
I think once they call us and they are able to have a conversation with us, it just leads into them naturally coming in, meeting with us. We have an open discussion about what their thoughts are, and then we're able to guide them with our knowledge. People do have some really great ideas about how they'd like to do that.
For my funeral, I would probably insist on loud music, lots of food and drink, and I would want people leaving like they leave my house at a party, saying, what a good party, what a good funeral.
At my funeral, you can definitely expect there'll be a churro bar.
I think it's really important to have those conversations about what you want, but I also think it's really important to have the conversations with your family about what they might need. And there's a lot of people, for instance, who have this tendency to, you know what, don't make a fuss.
Oh gosh, they better make a fuss over me.
Death has not been a topic of conversation that I've normally discussed. My parents come from a generation where it's still considered a little bit taboo, and my sons are young, so it's really up to me to change that and start the conversation.
When I get home, I will be definitely initiating a conversation about my end-of-life wishes, because today really made me hyper-aware that it's not just about me, it's about who I'm leaving behind.
After the conversations today, I'm definitely gonna go home and chat with my husband about my end-of-life wish. And I think it's really important because we have a newborn, and I am now thinking beyond myself and thinking about our family as a whole when it comes to these decisions.
And I think it's also important to know that, you know, while we're talking a lot about celebrating and making it somewhat uplifting, someone has died, and that's sad. So I think a really good funeral allows space for all emotions to be felt. That's what that day is for. It's a dedicated day to honor, celebrate, and just feel.